The air over Stone Town tasted of cloves and salt. Halima moved through the market with a woven basket pressed to her hip, memorizing stall layouts as if they were chapters in a book she would someday write. She had a habit of pausing at every heap of cinnamon sticks to imagine a label with her name on it, Halima's House of Spice. The dream made her walk lighter, her kanga fluttering like a bright reef fish in the tide of shoppers. At the corner near Jaw's Corner, a machete bit into a green coconut with a soft crack. She looked up to see a young man pouring matafu into paper cups, his forearms steady, a smile pulling easily at his mouth whenever someone said, Asante. The sign above him read, Uncle Salam's Coconuts. The smile faltered when he met her eyes, then returned, warmer. Karibu, he said. First cup is on the house if you tell me which spice is your favorite. Iliki, Halima answered without thinking. Cardamom. It smells like a promise. He laughed, handed her the cup, and introduced himself as Rashid. The coconut water was cool and sweet. For a moment everything slowed, the clatter of vendors, the glide of a passing dow's mast beyond the rooftops, the hush between two strangers tasting the same morning. Halima returned the next day with a ribboned bundle of cinnamon and a small jar of ground cloves. For your customers, she said. Rashid's fingers brushed hers as he took the jar, a light touch that drew a quiet breath from them both. His uncle, a broad man with salt in his beard, watched with amused approval and asked Halima to sit. They talked about the market's rhythms, how certain breezes brought tourists down Darjani Street and how, after rain, locals came for warm spices to lift the damp from their houses. Halima mapped it out on brown paper, arrows, times, notes. You think like a shopkeeper, Rashid said. Or a captain, she replied, pointing to the Dow sails blinking white beyond the alley. Their laughter stretched easy and bright. Later, as the sun lowered, Halima walked home along the seafront. Behind her, she felt the new weight of recognition. Before her, her dream held steady like a lighthouse, but now it had a companion, the sound of a knife splitting coconut for two. Bibi Zawina, Halima's grandmother, had a nose that could tell last year's clothes from this year's. She sniffed Halima's gifts, nodded, and tied a kanga with the proverb, Haraka Haraka Haina Baraka. Slow and steady has blessings. Your eyes are full of something, Bibi said gently. Salt air and cardamom, Halima joked, but her cheeks warmed. Rashid came by in the afternoon with his uncle, offering to carry sacks of nutmeg from the boat. Their shoulders worked in rhythm, the weight a conversation of its own. When Bibi brought out spiced tea, Rashid wrapped his hands around the cup like a boy remembering a long-ago winter. I want to learn, he said, looking at the jars lining the shelves. Start with your nose, Bibi said. Close your eyes. So they did. Halima guided him. This is clove, carafoo, heady and sharp. Cinnamon, dalasini, soft and warm. Cardamom iliki, bright like a door opening. His lashes trembled, he guessed right each time. When he opened his eyes, they were shining the way the water does at noon. Foradani Gardens at night had its own orchestra. The hiss of grills, the murmur of bargaining, tarab drifting like incense. Rashid found Halima near the sugarcane press. Walk? He asked, and she nodded. They moved past boys flipping into the sea, past families sharing plates of octopus and cassava. Lantern lights stitched gold into Halima's kanga border. A musician began to sing an old Sidi Binti Saad love song. Rashid's hand hovered near Halima's elbow, almost but not quite touching. When a gust lifted the hem of her scarf, he caught it and smoothed it down with a carefulness that felt like a vow. She met his eyes, the world narrowed to the line of his mouth, the steady rise of his chest. They stood that way for a taut heartbeat, then let the sea carry the moment away before it turned into something they could not name. Back on the bench, they shared a plate of fried cassava. If you had your shop, he asked, what would you sell first? A blend, she said, smiling. For courage. He tapped the table twice. Then someday sell it to me. The notice went up outside the cultural center. Scholarship, entrepreneurship and heritage trade, Muscat. Halima read it once, twice, 3 times as if the words might shift. It was a 2-year program in spice marketing and small business design. She felt her chest flood with light, and an undertow of fear. Bibi smoothed the paper on the table that evening. Your mother would be proud, she said. And I will be proud whether you board that plane or open your shop here. But choose with a steady heart. Halima folded the notice and tucked it into her Quran. When Rashid heard, his smile came with a shadow. You have to try, he said. You must. They stood under a breadfruit tree as evening lit the sky coral and lilac. The air between them was spiced and uncertain. He reached out, then pulled back, fists in his pockets. I will help you prepare, he said softly. She nodded, grateful and aching. They turned the coconut stand into a classroom. Rashid quizzed her on cost projections while shaving the tops off matafu. Halima drafted a brand story, clove ships, grandmother's recipes, Swahili proverbs, while Rashid stacked cups in perfect towers. Sometimes their shoulders touched, barely, and each time the touch felt both casual and essential, like breath. One evening, a sudden rain herded everyone beneath the stand's tarp. The world smudged into silver. Halima laughed, her lashes beaded with water, and tilting her face toward Rashid, she said, "Tell me your dream." He swallowed. "Mine is small. To take care of Uncle, make this stand something steady. To be the sort of man people trust." Rain softened the space around them. "Small dreams can be anchors," she said, and her voice turned quiet. "They keep others from floating away." When the rain eased, he handed her a coconut with a straw, his fingers lingering just long enough to say what neither of them risked aloud. A letter arrived. Shortlisted, interviews in Dar es Salaam next month. Halima read it 3 times and sat down fast. Rashid's grin was immediate, but his eyes flickered toward the ocean as if measuring distance. "We will practice your answers," he said, already rearranging the stall's crates into a pretend panel. "Tell them about Bibi's nose." They rehearsed after sunset, the alley lamp casting gold across Halima's cheekbones. She spoke, faltered, started again, voice gaining depth and music. Rashid nodded, asked harder questions, made her laugh when she stiffened. At the end, he pressed a small pouch into her palm, cloves he had picked himself in a shell, smooth as bone. "For luck," he murmured. They stood close in the narrow lane, the air thick with jasmine and possibility. She wanted to rest her forehead against his chest. Instead, she stepped back and tucked the pouch into her scarf, the touch like hiding a flame. Uncle Salim fell ill, a fever that left him weak and cross. Rashid took over everything, hauling crates, ordering stock, smiling for customers through worry. Halima came early to help, tying her kanga higher, sleeves rolled. They worked side by side until the sun burned high, then sat on the stoop, tired in the same sweet way. In the quiet, Rashid's voice roughened. "When you leave, if you leave, I will be all right." He looked at his hands. "But there will be an empty place where your laugh used to be." Halima reached over and laced their fingers together. The touch was simple and total, like stepping from shade into light. "There will be an empty place in me too," she said. They let their hands rest, neither making a promise that might break the other. When she stood to go, he rose with her, eyes holding hers a fraction longer than necessary, as if memorizing where to look when she wasn't there. Ramadan came, a gentler rhythm. They worked slower, saved their brightest words for the evening. Sometimes after iftar they walked to the sea and sat with their knees almost touching, speaking softly of childhoods like lanterns set on water. One night, under a thin crescent moon, Rashid took a thread of kanga cloth and tied it around Halima's wrist. "Not a chain," he said, smiling. "A reminder of the dock where ships return." She traced the knot and pressed her fingers into his palm, a gratitude that felt like prayer. "And here," she whispered, placing a clove between his fingers, "a reminder of why I go." When Eid burst bright and noisy, they visited Bibi together with sweet dates and laughter. In a photograph, their shoulders angled toward each other, not touching, and yet anyone could see what lived in the space between. The ferry to Dar es Salaam was crowded, the sea restless. Rashid carried Halima's bag and stood with her at the railing. "You hate rough water?" she teased, and he made a face. "I'll forgive it if it carries you to good news." His humor thinned as the horn blew. The world pressed forward, time moved like a tide. On the far side, he waited in the terminal during her interview, pacing, counting breaths. Halima sat before a row of serious faces and told them about the smell of cloves after rain, about women who mapped memory in jars, about markets like lungs breathing in and out. She spoke her shop into the room as if it already stood on a sunny corner with a blue door. When she came out, shaking, Rashid found her, and they walked until the city's noise fell away. In a small mosque courtyard they sat side by side on cool tiles. He didn't speak, only let their shoulders lean together until her heartbeat steadied under the safe weight of the moment. The email came at dawn, accepted. A place in Muscat. Tuition covered, a modest stipend, departure in 6 weeks. Halima's breath snagged, joy rose fast and tangled with a hollow ache. She ran to Bibi, who embraced her until the edges of fear softened. "Alhamdulillah," Bibi whispered. "Now choose how to carry this blessing." Rashid lifted her off her feet when he heard, spinning her in a clove-scented embrace that made her laugh and blink back tears. He set her down carefully as if she were a jar he didn't want to crack. "We will make a plan," he said. "Call every day. I will send you our market gossip. You will send me pictures of every spice jar in Oman." The plan sounded strong in the daylight. But that evening when the sea exhaled and the alleys grew blue, something brittle crept in. Halima touched the thread at her wrist and wondered what time would do to knots and vows. Pressure arrived disguised as advice. A cousin said, 2 years is forever, you'll forget each other. A friend said, love is a spice, it fades if the jar is left open. Uncle Salim, better now, slapped Rashid's shoulder. There are many girls, he said gently. Don't chain yourself. They fought over nothing, a missed message, an offhand joke. A breeze pushed a door shut, both flinched. In the coconut stand's shadow, their words grew sharp. This is not a test I chose, Halima said, blinking quickly. But it is one I must pass. Rashid's hands opened, then closed. I know, he said, throat tight. I know, and still, it hurts like a knife made of air. He reached for her, then stopped. She took one step forward and pressed her forehead to his, the touch quieting all their storms. Breathe with me, she whispered. They did, their breath learning the shape of patience, their fear learning the taste of mercy. A storm blew in sudden and hard, waves slapping the seawall and hustling vendors indoors. Rashid insisted on walking Halima home anyway, holding a woven palm frond over them like a tiny roof. They laughed when it failed, rain painting their cheeks, clothes sticking. Under a dripping eave they paused, a breathless pause that felt like the space before a song's chorus. Stay, he said, and the word was both plea and promise. Halima touched his jaw, rain beating on her fingertips, and answered with the truth that bruised, I can't. She added, softer, not because I love you less. Because I love the person I'm trying to become too. They stood that way until the rain loosened its grip. When they stepped back into the street, the storm had rinsed the city into sharper color. Doors bluer, mangoes greener, their future both nearer and farther at once. The last week became a necklace of small goodbyes. Rashid taught her how to split a coconut cleanly. Halima taught him the difference between 2 kinds of cinnamon by sound alone. They wrote lists, who would feed Bibi's cat, which vendors needed new signage, and tucked them into each other's pockets like charms. On their final evening, they climbed to the House of Wonder's shadow and watched the sea. Halima gave Rashid a paper packet labeled Ujasiri, Courage Blend, her first official product. Clove, cinnamon, a whisper of cardamom. For mornings when you think I've forgotten you, she said. He pressed a shell into her hand, drilled and strung on a simple cord. For days when you think the ocean is bigger than us. They didn't kiss. They stood wrapped around each other in a hold that felt sacred, their cheeks against each other's temples, the old Tarab melody from the gardens threading through the night like a blessing. At the airport, the glass walls caught the morning and turned it bright. Halima's ticket felt too light for the weight it carried. Rashid walked with her as far as he could, their footsteps matching. At the barrier they stopped. The world hushed. I choose my dream, Halima said, voice steady, and I choose you. I don't know what shape that makes, but I will learn it. Rashid's mouth trembled into a smile. I choose to be the dock, he replied. Steady. Boring even. But here. They laughed through tears, the sound as tender as the first slice of coconut after fasting. They held each other a long moment. Then Halima stepped away, turning only once to lift her hand, the wrist still circled by kanga thread. On the plane she opened her bag and found the Courage Blend and a folded note. Spices travel well. So do promises. In Muscat the air held a different salt and a new music. That night she called, and his voice crossed the water warm as tea. 2 years would ask much of them. But the market would keep breathing, the sea would keep returning, and somewhere, a blue door would swing open under a sign painted with her name. When she came home, the first person to step through would be a man carrying a packet labeled Ujasiri, smiling like he always had, as if every clove in the world were a small star lighting their way back.